Our next presentation deals with using data to break down silos. We have 4 speakers: Laura Giverts, Director of Marketing and Business Analytics for Macy's; Sean Byrnes, CEO of Outlier; Andrea Spillmann-Gajek, VP of Customer Success with Outlier; and finally, Jennifer Ellard, VP of Marketing, also with Outlier. Gentlemen and ladies, please start us off.
Sharing my screen, John. Can you see my screen?
Yes, yes.
I started the company 5 years ago because I was frustrated that the state-of-the-art of tools today in data, tools like Tableau and Looker databases, are very good at answering questions that are asked, but often the hardest part is knowing what questions to ask in the first place. So I started Outlier with the vision for what data tools might look like in 10 years. How would we have tools that would help ask questions, where they would look through the data for us to find the insights so we could do what humans are good at, which is making decisions and taking action. And that's what Outlier does today. So I'll give you a quick overview of what we do, and then hand it off to Andrea and Laura to walk you through the kind of impact you can have in your business today. So Outlier is a software platform. It connects to your data wherever it is. It could be in your databases. It could be in cloud tools like Adobe and Salesforce. It could be in individual systems like Facebook ads or Google ads. Wherever it is, you spend a few minutes connecting Outlier to that data. You don't have to configure anything or set it up. You don't have to tell Outlier what to look for. After just a few minutes of connecting Outlier to lots of these different places, you get insights in the form of questions about what unexpected changes are happening in your data. So it's really trying to fulfill that promise I originally saw, which is helping us sort through that massive amounts of data coming out of every different part of the business to find that signal in the noise to help us know what questions we should be asking. It's doing what humans can't do by using massive amounts of machine learning, dozens of different types of machine learning in conjunction. It's looking through every conceivable possible part of the business, customers by every possible segmentation, which is millions and millions of segments if you think about customers by age, gender, location, cohort, SKUs, more than any human could ever look through. And it's bringing those insights in high fidelity to extract the 3 to 4 key questions you should be asking. And those questions may be different for different people. The questions that I might ask as a CEO are different than Andrea in customer success, different than Jen in marketing. And Outlier's power is to sort through all that data to bring us the key questions that we need to do our job more effectively. In that way, it's like we all have our own personal data scientists looking through all of our data across all of our systems constantly to find that signal so we can ask better questions automatically. And what does that mean in terms of the greater ecosystem of tools? Because everybody has a lot of tools they use in data today. We like to think about it like a value chain. You have different steps that you use to get value from data. You collect data, and you store it, then you visualize it, and then you get value in the form of dashboards, maybe spreadsheets, maybe some even machine learning in the future. Whatever it is, that's how you're extracting value from data today. And this value chain was fine. There's nothing wrong with it as data started to grow. But now data is exploding. We find a missing link has opened up. And many of our customers come to us because that missing link is turning data into a burden. They find that they're too reactive instead of proactive. They're not able to make the most of the opportunities because they only find out about them after they've already passed. So that's what Outlier tries to do. We fill in that missing gap in the ecosystem. We don't replace your visualization tools. Those are very good. We don't, we're trying to find better questions that you can use those tools to answer because they're very good at answers. We don't replace your data storage systems. We don't require yet a new copy of your data to yet a new system. Outlier connects to the systems that exist today. It doesn't copy data out of them. It does in-place analysis. So we're not making copies of all your customer data. We're not trying to make your regulatory or legal compliance more difficult. Outlier's job is to plug into your data wherever it is and help you more out of the investment you've already made while getting more value out of the insights that will help you make better decisions. So that's a lot of talk about PowerPoint slides. Let me show you the product quickly so you get a sense of what it does, and then we'll talk about actual impact it has for customers. So this is what the Outlier product looks like. As you can see, I have here a feed of different stories. This is a real company, real data. This happens to be an e-commerce business. They're connected to a bunch of different data sources, including databases that track inventory, web analytics tools, advertising systems. And if you were to set up your systems tomorrow, these are the kind of experience you'd expect the day after that. Each story here is got a lot of depth to it. They capture what happened in our business, why it happened. Outlier is always going to show you its work, so if it's going to show you that a new trend is developing, it'll always explain why it thinks that, why something happened. There's no black boxes here. It drills down into the root causes to define exactly what might be going on under the surface to drive bigger changes in your business. What customer segment is driving more sales? What kind of product is resulting in all those returns? These sorts of questions. You can use these stories in many different ways, adding comments to create discussions on them, and even sharing them in the form of PDFs, PowerPoint images, or just grabbing a link. So each insight is very social and easily understood and easily shared with your team. There are dozens of kinds of analysis Outlier is doing automatically under the surface to look through all that data to find these insights. But even then, there's only going to be a handful of insights every day. You can see here I'm getting 5 insights here in my feed from Outlier for today. And the stories are very varied. They can be as simple as that first story we saw, as complicated as finding relationships in the data, and as sophisticated as finding data quality problems, issues in our databases and our data systems that might indicate larger problems, and whether or not we can trust the dashboards we rely on today for answers. So the goal of Outlier is to plug into our data quickly. It doesn't require setup. There's no weeks and months of configuration. Really, it's plug in our data and then let it do its work. Let it find the insights so that we can do what humans do best, which is look at these stories and take them to the point of making a decision and taking some action. Now, I don't want you to take my word for it, which is why Andrea and Laura are here. I'm going to hand it off to them and talk about how exactly Outlier can turn these insights into value and specifically the impact they can have on your business.
Great. Thank you, Sean. So as I mentioned, I'm Andrea. I head up customer success here at Outlier. I'm really excited to be chatting with you all, and especially excited to have Laura here sharing how her team has been using Outlier. I can give you lots of examples across all of our clients of where we're driving value, how we're driving value, but I think whatever I say would pale in comparison to hearing directly from them. So we've been working with Laura and her team at Macy's for a bit over a year now. And I'm really excited to hand it over to her and let her describe the business problems that kind of brought them to Outlier and how we've been delivering value on that ever since.
Great. Thanks, Andrea, and thanks to the whole Outlier team for having me on. So really the reason that we had reached out to Outlier initially, we at Macy's, we constantly see kind of changes and trends to our overall metrics. And we were actually in a situation where we had to create a SWAT team because we had seen our traffic going up, conversion going down, and we could see that was the kind of longer term trend, but then there was also suddenly these weird spikes that we couldn't explain. And as we started digging in, we saw that there were many, many small things contributing to that. There wasn't really one smoking gun causing it. So the result was we got 20 cross-functional team members together and locked in a room for about 2 weeks, people from marketing, people from product, people from engineering, people from merchandising, and we were all looking at our own individual data sets to try and identify what was going on with this data. So that experience really set us on the search for a company that would help us to answer those why questions and also to be more proactive at catching those problems so that we weren't trying to chase down problems once we saw them in the data. We would actually be finding that more proactively. So as a result, we ended up doing a trial with Outlier. And if you guys want to go to the next slide, I can show you kind of an example. So one of the things we identified during that SWAT team that I was describing was that we had some tagging issues that occurred that were not allowing us to track our product page views. So that was one of the things when we jumped into the trial, we wanted to see how Outlier would have shown that to us. Rather than having us look back through data and find that ourselves. So this is the story that we actually would have received 3 days after that tagging broke. So that was really exciting for us that we would have seen that this relationship changed, and that would have immediately alerted us into looking at these product page views and trying to see what was going on there. And then I think the next slide is just showing us, so this is after, so that SWAT team was going on throughout kind of the month of June through July. We identified this issue and fixed posted it mid-July. And then what Outlier would have shown us after that was resolved was that now these two metrics that should have been trending together this whole time start trending together again, and that relationship is resumed. So this was really exciting for us to see during the trial. We were all kind of in awe of how much time we could have saved had we seen these from the beginning rather than sitting in there and scratching our heads. So as a result of that, we jumped into a full implementation with Outlier. We integrated 3 cloud sources. We integrated with Google Analytics, Adobe Analytics, and Facebook. And implementing all 3 of those systems was super easy. In 1 week, we were up and running and starting to receive stories.
Laura, based on this trial that you did with Outlier, it looks here from the insights that Outlier showed at the end of that, you had this problem going on for 4 or 5, maybe even more weeks. How quickly do you think, if you'd had Outlier, you would have been able? What do you think those 4 or 5 weeks would have gone down to if you had Outlier?
Yeah, I think probably about 2 weeks of this was the actual, fixing of that issue and then getting it released into the code. So if we had Outlier, we would have seen that story happen, 3 days after it broke, and then within the next 2 weeks, we would have been able to remedy it versus it extending on for the whole time frame.
And I asked a little bit of a leading question there because obviously that's some of what we asked during the trial, and I think that the benefit of Outlier's trial process, and I think this is a little bit of a prod to folks on the phone, is that it's pretty easy for us to run a trial. We typically can look at historic events like this, something that caused pain or even a missed opportunity, and really quickly show you what Outlier would have done. What would your business have been if you'd had Outlier? And we find that that's a really helpful way for us to, instead of telling you all of the great things that Outlier can do for your business, just show you and let you make that decision yourself. Cool. And so, Laura, you talked about how quick it was to get Outlier up and running. Should we jump into some of how Outlier has been helping your team since that first week when we started showing insights?
Yes, definitely.
Great.
So this story is, I think, probably the highest dollar value story that we've seen from Outlier. What this is showing you is that our cost per impression was trending down for one of the social networks, and this is actually with Facebook. And so a little bit more context about what this actually highlighted for us. This was during the beginning of our Friends and Family campaign over the summer, and that's one of our largest sales driving campaigns of the year. So we should have been spending full speed ahead on Facebook, but this actually prompted us to go look at what we were spending because we would have expected our CPMs to be going up if we were really spending a lot, and we saw that we were actually spending drastically under budget at the beginning of this enormous event. So that was actually saved us, we estimated about $5 million in sales for being able to react on the next day and start ramping up spend immediately for the rest of our event. And another really kind of cool consequence of this story, this highlighted why that was missed was really a communication process issue between our internal teams and our agency. So this also allowed us to go back and fix that process and have better communication in the future.
I think the key point Laura's calling out there is how Outlier can help, not just with point issues, not just identifying, at a point in time something is perhaps broken or something isn't working or something unexpected is happening, but helping users, helping our clients really quickly dive into what's driving that. And a lot of times it is something you're taking for granted, a process or a communication that our clients think is working, that they might not be checking up on, that actually isn't. And so that ability to not just help our clients, take action or fix a point problem, but actually get to those underlying systems and communication points in the process to make the business as a whole stronger and better going forward is really where we also see some pretty exciting results across clients. So I'm moving on to another example of where we've been able to help you, Laura.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, so this example was highlighting something that was working well. So this is the sales dollars that have been added to a customer's bag. And what this showed us was we got this story right after that last spike on July 24th. And that day had actually been a flash sale event. And so digging into the story a little bit more, we actually realized that those other two large spikes were also flash sale events. And so that really allowed us to partner with this specific affiliate partner more closely and make sure that every flash sale event we were going to be working with them because they're obviously good at driving the types of customers who are interested in that flash sale.
Yeah. And this is a pretty fun example. A lot of times we focus on the problems in a business, sales dropping or problems arising, data quality issues. But Outlier is also really good at helping uncover opportunities, places where if you only knew about them a little bit sooner, you could take advantage to hopefully drive even more business or even more of the outcomes that you're looking for.
And then this example was to illustrate some of the stories that have been most helpful for us. The conversion funnels have been really helpful because being in an e-commerce business, this is something we monitor very closely. We want to make sure that as we're increasing our traffic, we're also increasing sales and conversion. So these funnels are something that we monitor at kind of the more macro level, so across our entire website or across each device. But when you get really granular into each different marketing partner that's driving traffic to the site, that's not something that we can monitor ourselves. There may be hundreds or thousands of different combinations of funnels. So having Outlier allows us to get those stories surfaced when there are changes that we would not really have identified by just looking at those macro conversion funnels. So this example was showing us that our page views and sessions were increasing for this specific social network, but our transactions were not. Transactions per session were actually staying the same. So this then allowed us to go see what's going on with that social network. They're driving a ton of traffic that's not converting. Is that something we really want to be paying for? And then we're able to adjust our strategy based on that.
And one thing that I wanted to highlight with this funnel story is, we talked about how quick it was to get Outlier up and running for Macy's. Configuration like this, customizing a funnel, is also super easy because we're just customizing it at the high level, and then Outlier is automatically going in and looking across kind of every single dimension of this data to help find the story. We're monitoring hundreds or even thousands of different ways of looking at this that an analyst might not be able to and probably wouldn't be able to. Yet the setup for it takes minutes. A funnel story is pretty obvious in terms of marketing or sales, how it would fit. But you can also think of it in terms of maybe supply chain or kind of different areas of your business where you're tracking the movement of really anything across multiple phases. So Laura, I think there's maybe one more story left, but I was hoping before we run into that, can you talk a little bit? We talked about getting Outlier set up. We talked about some of the examples and some of where we've been helping the business from the outset. Can you talk a little bit too about who's using Outlier and what's the growth and spread kind of been from that first week when we got up and running with you?
Yeah, definitely. So I think there was really two main use cases that I think we want to get out of Outlier. And one is the business driving opportunities. So stories like the Facebook example and the flash sale example. And then the second is data quality, so monitoring to make sure that tagging isn't breaking or there's no issues coming up in our data set. So initially, my team is the marketing analytics team. So we were the first kind of users of that, and then we would pass along any of those insights that we were seeing from the stories to the other partners that we work with. As we started getting more used to the stories, we actually extended that out, and we have a lot of our marketing partners are receiving them directly now. So, for example, our paid search team gets a feed of stories each morning that's specific to paid search, and they're able to act really quickly on those spend recommendations when they see opportunities to tweak spend up or down for really niche use cases, like going down almost to the keyword level. And then for the data quality side of it, we also have our data engineering teams receiving stories so that they're able to monitor and make sure that nothing is breaking as well.
Yeah, I know we were excited to roll out, not just spreading across the teams, but as you and your team saw more engagement and value to then roll up to the executive level as well, and to set up higher level and more summary insights for them while giving your team some more fine-grained analysis and thinking through kind of those communication channels as well.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, thank you. It's a good point. So we also do have feeds that are going out to our executives within the marketing org, and that's really taking the key stories for each of the different marketing tactics and highlighting kind of the highest volume, biggest impact stories of the day to that audience.
All right. So I think this is our last set of insights before we dive into questions. And I'm hearing there are a lot of questions coming.
Great. So this one is something that has been, over the last 6 months, has been a really hot topic at Macy. We've been having a lot more bot traffic than we ever really did in the past. So being able to detect that and then kind of exclude it from our analysis and make sure that it's not actually influencing strategic decisions we're making has become more and more important. So Outlier has been very, very helpful at highlighting those to us quickly and letting us be proactive about cleaning out our data. So this example was on the same day we received both of these stories, and we saw that we were seeing a spike in page views that were coming from San Francisco, Oakland, San Jose area. And then we also saw what marketing channel they were coming in from. They looked like it was internal traffic, which doesn't really make much sense. So based on these two stories, we were actually able to identify that pattern of traffic that we needed to exclude from our data. So this was super helpful in highlighting that to us quickly, and we didn't really have to go dig through the data in depth to figure out what data to start excluding. That was just provided for us by the stories.
Thanks. Yeah, this has been really interesting for me. Again, leading customer success, I get to see kind of across multiple clients. And I remember when I started with Outlier a bit over a year ago, I really wasn't hearing much about bot traffic, and suddenly, as Laura said, kind of within the past 6 months, it's been a major topic across a lot of our clients. And we didn't know that before it started showing up in Outlier. We didn't manually set anything up. Our clients didn't manually set anything up. But as bots started becoming more and more, a higher and higher percentage of web traffic, Outlier was automatically picking that up and was automatically highlighting that for our clients, which I think is kind of a pertinent trend, sort of given where we are now, right? We're all sitting at home in front of our computers instead of together in a room because the world is an uncertain place and things happen, and we often don't expect those things to happen, and we don't know how they're going to shape up. When the world goes a little crazy, we don't even know necessarily what questions to be asking. We don't necessarily know how to make sense of it. And that's where Outlier comes in. That's where the fact that you don't have to tell Outlier what to look for, you don't have to set it up, can come in. In fact, we just heard from one of our clients in basically the vacation space, the travel space, that they found out about the coronavirus and its impact because of Outlier. They didn't know to go look for these changes, but suddenly they were opening their email and seeing business impact. And they could tell where it was spreading before They were even getting official alerts because they could see those changes in their business delivered by Outlier. That's obviously not the kind of example we want to be highlighting necessarily. We'd rather it's a much happier event. But we are, we want to support our clients through everything that's happening. And I think that's where our ability to highlight the unknown unknowns and to show you where to go look can be really powerful in these times. With that, I hear there's been quite a few questions coming through. Jen, I think those are all coming directly to you. Do you want to start firing away on those?
Absolutely. We've got a few questions here, and I'd like to start with one. I'll call it a twofer because it's a two-part question. One part for Laura, and then maybe Andrea, you could take the second part of the question. Amit asks, is there someone from Macy's that is dedicated to tracking Outliers data output, or is that the role of the account manager on the Outlier side? He's curious if there needs to be someone on the client side that needs to be consistently tracking the analysis, or do we get notification when there's unexpected behavior?
Yeah, so the way we've set up our integration is to have data feeds that are specific to each of the different teams in Macy's. So, for example, we have one related to search, one related to email, one related to affiliate. And we get stories about each of those areas of business every morning. So every morning we'll get like 3 to 6 stories in our inbox that are the most relevant topics of that day. And so we have, internally we have usually an analyst. An analyst is looking through those and then highlighting them to the marketing partners, or in some cases we also have our marketing partners on there directly so they see them each morning as well. So we are reviewing them internally. We also work with the Outlier team very closely on things like if we want to customize, or if there's specific things that we want to dig into more, they help us out with some of that analysis.
Yeah, this is Andrea. I can follow up on that. Across all of our clients, we find that Outlier is just a part of their workflow. It doesn't require a full person dedicated to reviewing the insight. We use it internally as well, and it's maybe 10 minutes of your day in your inbox. A lot of our team members and our clients actually like reviewing it on the train on their way into work. They get the email and they can quickly at the start of the day get just a few minute overview of where they might want to start their focus for that day.
Yeah, and actually, sorry, just to build on that, that is exactly how we're using it. It's, I think that the beginning of each of our days is to look at a couple of our Tableau dashboards that are like the key metrics dashboards, and then look at the Outlier stories as well, and any findings from those kind of guide what we're going to do for the rest of the day.
Makes total sense. We have another question. Thank you, ladies, for taking that question. Another question in regards to, we've talked a little bit today about Macy's, obviously, as a retailer. Sean, can you talk about some of the other customers that we work with and what other types of data we might be analyzing for those types of customers?
Yeah, the good news is today Outlier customers are very numerous. We work across a number of different industries. Retail e-commerce is obviously one. We also work with large financial services institutions like Capital One. We work with large pharmaceutical providers like Celgene. We even work with the U.S. government. I think that the key aspect of Outlier is that if you have millions of consumers using your products, or tens of millions, or hundreds of millions, you often probably have problems knowing what questions to ask. You have trouble understanding exactly when consumer behavior is beginning to shift, when certain customer segments are beginning to change, when the competitive marketplace begins to have strange influences on behavior. And that's where Outlier can shine. Outlier can look through all that mountain of data from those millions or hundreds of millions of consumers to help find out what key questions you should be asking so you stay ahead of those opportunities and those problems. So it's a wide variety of industries. It's a wide variety of use cases, as Laura mentioned. But the key question here is it's not doing your job for you. It's just making sure you're very good at doing your job. And that can include the marketing team who needs to understand performance. It can include the data team who needs to understand data quality issues. It can include the product teams who want to understand merchandising and different changes of the product and how that might affect or have unexpected side effects to how people behave in it overall. So we found that a wide variety of users, from executives down to the operations team, find that it saves them a lot of time, and often it actually unlocks opportunities that are more valuable than you might find on your own.
Excellent. I have a good question on integration here from Kevin. It's a two-part question. What is the integration setup like? Kevin's organization has dozens of different data tables with complex relationships and filters that define metrics or cuts that they care about, and he's curious how Outlier would work with that. And his follow-on question is there any limit on the data volume that we could analyze? And, can you handle hundreds of millions of rows or beyond?
This is Sean. Let me answer that one. The answer is there is no limit. We work with some of the biggest data businesses in the world. We process every credit card transaction on a credit card network. We analyze enormously large volumes of data for the government. So the data volume is not a challenge for us. So that's not an issue. We work with very large. In fact, often what we work with is companies who have systems like that, but a few of them. And often what they're looking for, what are the insights hiding between them? What are the insights that we can't find because they are so large and we can't combine them into one data model? Outlier doesn't require all your data there's no data modeling step in the integration. So if you integrate to a cloud service like Adobe or Facebook or Google Analytics like Laura did, it's just a few clicks. You don't have to tell Outlier what to look for. Again, you're not configuring it and saying, look at these metrics. You're saying, here's our accounts. When it comes to SQL databases, all you have to do is point out the tables that you want us to connect to. We support every SQL compliant system, ranging from Snowflake to Amazon Redshift to Postgres to Microsoft SQL Server. You just tell Outlier what tables you want us to connect to. You don't have to configure queries. You don't have to bring in data models. Outlier is going to look at every possible conceivable way of analyzing that data. So one way to think about it is that if you have, say, a database of transactions, say credit card transactions, Outlier will look at every possible conceivable way to look at those credit card transactions. What was the total amount of money spent by state, by city, by gender, by age, by product, by SKU? And what about what was the total amount spent for men over the age of 35 living in Oakland who've been a customer for 3 months? And that's what it has to do. It has to look across every conceivable possible way of looking at data, because that's how it finds the questions that we're hiding. That's how it can do this comprehensive survey of the data. It's not easy. It requires a lot of mathematics. But the good news is it's also not slow. So as Laura mentioned, typical customers have Outlier analyze their data in the middle of the night, and it takes an hour, maybe two, and then it has all of those insights waiting for you the next morning when you show up for work. So it's not it's not an alerting system. It's not a monitoring system. It's not giving you second-by-second insights about what's going on. It's doing deeper, more comprehensive analysis of huge data sets, but it does that very quickly, and it produces the insights that you saw in these examples.
Excellent answer there, Sean. Question now for Laura. In regards to your team, it sounds like you have multiple analysts on your team, and you've already saved some money. You mentioned that earlier, but how has Outlier saved your team time?
Yeah, it saved a ton of time. So just the kind of daily process flow that I was mentioning, where it's the first part of our day is looking at the story, that's allowing us to be proactive. So, we might see something that's going on within email and be able to respond to that immediately, versus in the past, that analyst may have, discovered that issue a week later, and then they're spending hours to discover all the intricacies of that issue. Now we can just look at our stories, get alerted to that immediately, and then dig in through Outlier's UI to see what were the root causes of that story, what stories are related. There's a lot of features in there that allow us to quickly dig in and identify what's actually going on without even having to go to our other sources. We can do a lot of that within Outlier itself. So that's a huge, huge time saving.
And across other clients as well, we find and I think we've heard this as well from your data, your IT team and some of the teams dealing more with the data, is that Outlier is also helping them more quickly hone in on challenges and opportunities within the underlying data as well. And so the insights are only as good as the data generating it. And there can be any number of challenges coming up. You mentioned, bot traffic and how that might skew the data, but everything from tagging to other ways that the underlying data is set up and being tracked. The ability to really quickly find that maybe something's missing or something's not being categorized correctly enables the teams managing the data to not have to worry about that accuracy and that monitoring as much because they're getting alerted proactively to challenges there, so they can really focus in on higher level issues, but also be much more ahead of challenges and addressing them before they really blow up.
Great point, Andrea. I have a couple more questions here. One from George, who asks about what does the diagnostic or deep dive process look like after identifying an outlier, an issue, an outlier, or in dashboard? So I think this is a good question for you, Laura. How is your team? What does the process look like after you see something? And then, Andrea, you can talk about other customers as well. What do some of their processes look like?
Yeah, so especially I think the first step is, the screenshot that's currently up in the Zoom, that was from the email story that we have received in our inbox. So the first step is when one of those stories is interesting, we click through into Outlier. And once we're actually in the UI, there are a lot of ways to kind of try and diagnose why that story is happening. There's root cause analysis. It shows you, are there similar trend changes with other metrics, or kind of what other questions should you be asking? So that's our first step, is to use Outlier and see if we can diagnose what's going on there. If we need to dig a little bit deeper, then we would be diving into our other sources, generally querying some of our data that we have in that Hadoop data warehouse.
Yeah, I think what Laura described is pretty typical across our clients. A lot of them, because each outlier insight and story already allows you to dive a couple layers deeper, for a lot of folks, that's often enough. And with an outlier, you can see in a sort of, you see small little buttons here. Download PDF, download image, share, you can follow. There's a comment section. So there are ways within Outlier that you can already engage users, right? So I might go into an Outlier story, dive a little deeper there, and then, so I, as the head of a team, might tag one of the folks on my team and say, hey, what do you think's going on here? Or I noticed a change in this client. Have you followed up on it? So the goal is really to centralize and speed up as much as we can with an Outlier. There are additional deep dives beyond what's already presented that can also be done in Outlier. So some of our clients actually prefer to do as much as they can with an Outlier. They find it faster. It tends to load more quickly than some of their databases. But as Laura mentioned, every once in a while there will be that additional search that's required in another database or somewhere else, and clients can go and do that. But the goal is that we're narrowing that space so that whatever they're doing as a follow-up is targeted and fast and efficient, rather than kind of trying to sort through that haystack.
That's a great point, Andrea. Thank you, and Laura, for answering that question. We have a question in regards to data prep. How much data prep is involved? What type of data do you analyze, and the frequency? I'll give that to Sean, since I've just given you like a trifecta of questions to answer.
Absolutely. Well, maybe the best way is just to show. I'll jump back over here to the demo. This is what we were showing before in terms of the product. There is no data prep necessary. If you want to connect this to some cloud tools, obviously just one click to connect to Google Analytics or Google Ads. If you use something more sophisticated like Adobe Analytics, you might have to pop in a few pieces of information there, but that's the only step of the process. Same thing, Facebook Ads is just OAuth again. So that was the only step. As you can imagine, many times that takes a minute, maybe two, to get that set up. Any SQL blind database, it's just as easy to connect. Just tell us how to connect to it, and we're off to the races. That's the only step in the process. You select your tables. I think The key difference here, obviously, we do support things like secure tunnels, with Bastion hosts. Our team can set up those connections for you. So those would be done before you would actually connect to the database and provide a secure tunnel to your systems. But once that's set up, it's really just a matter of telling Outlier where the data lives and what to look at. And the reason there isn't more data prep necessary is that, again, Outlier is going to look at everything that's there, and it's going to look at every different possible component. So you don't have to worry about making sure the data is clean, for example, because as you saw in the demo, Outlier is already doing data quality analysis. It will find data quality issues for you and write you stories when that exists. So if you see an insight in Outlier, you don't have to wonder, is this real or is this an artifact of a data quality problem? You'll know, because if it's a data quality problem, you'll see a data quality story, things like missing data, corrupted data, these sorts of issues. But if it's a real business insight, it's probably a real business insight, real in the data. It also doesn't require any data modeling, because Outlier's job is to look at every possible conceivable direction of the data. So we connect to databases, for example, that range from the service database of the city of Oakland, who's processing every time somebody requests service for a pothole or a broken water main or a broken street light in their area, all the way over to large-scale numeric systems about international shipping and those sorts of things. So the database and data formats are varied. There's no standard format. As long as you have your data that lives in a SQL database table somewhere, you can get it to Outlier, just as easy as you saw, and you're off to the races. And the key aspect in there is, how is Outlier able to do it? It's not magic. How is it if you do a one-click integration that you can get high-fidelity stories from the Outlier system? And the reality is that it is smart because it's watched humans. Learned from watching humans for years now interact with insights. Every time you read a story, every time you share a story learning about you can provide feedback saying this is useful, this is not useful. And as a result, it's learned over the years what you're likely to find interesting in that data set. But even better, it gets personalized to your needs just by watching you use it. So there's no upfront data configuration, there's no data prep, because you configure the system just by using it. And once you get set up on the first day of using Outlier, it'll be pretty good. And on day 3, day 4, it'll be excellent. Because you'll have used it. You'll have read stories, you'll have provided feedback, it'll have learned from you, and by that it knows what you find interesting personally about your data in your business. And so that's how Outlier can get around that. It's using a lot more machine learning, a lot more adaptive systems than you might expect from traditional BI, which is very rules-driven and structured, because it's not trying to do what traditional systems do. Outlier would not be a good replacement for Tableau. It's not good at doing reporting. But it's great at filling in that blind spot that might exist behind a Tableau dashboard. It's great at finding those things that might otherwise be missed, and that's what it's optimized to do.
Excellent. That concludes our questions. If there's anyone else who wants to follow up with questions or comments about today, please feel free to do that. Thank you, Laura, Andrea, and Sean, for your participation today, and thank you all for joining.
Okay, Jennifer, further information is available from Outlier. Jennifer Ellard's email address is on the screen, jennifer@outlier.ai. And we can also follow up by email for further questions.